This is Behind the Mic with Kirkus Reviews, where the subjects are audiobooks and the actors who narrate them. I'm Jo Reed, and with me, Michele Cobb, the one, the only. Hello, Michele.
Hi, Jo. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. So tell me what we're talking about.
This week's theme is multi-voice titles where the actors read separate perspectives and they don't interact directly.
And that is happening more and more in audiobooks, which both you and I are very happy to hear.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like a good audio drama, but that's a completely different experience and much more time-consuming to pursue as a publisher.
Yes, and also more expensive
Yes.
to put together. Okay, so the three books we're talking about are
Mercy by Joan Silber, The Storm by Rachel Hawkins, and That's Not How It Happened by Craig Thomas.
We'll begin with Mercy by Joan Silber, and let us know who it's read by.
L.J. Ganser, Nan McNamara, Christina Moore, Alyssa Bresnahan, Helen Laser, Nick Walther, and that's it.
That's a lot. Okay, so this won an Earphones Award.
It did. And it's a really kind of interesting book because we don't often think about the reverberations of our choices, but that's really where the book is sitting, in the pocket of choices, chance encounters, and guilt people carry. In some ways, it reminded me a little of Les Mis.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I listened to this as well, and wow, I was really impressed by it and pretty much listened nonstop until it was done.
Yes, although it made me reflect on my own life as I was hearing the characters struggle with things in their lives. So I needed to take a few breaks, you know.
Uh-huh.
The story itself, as you know, spans decades in a non-linear fashion, and it's told through 6 loosely connected parts, and they're really connected through an emergency room visit.
Yes, and I thought the narrators were so good. L.J. Ganser, for example, he reads the Nero Wolfe mysteries, and his voice is really the first voice we hear, and he is Ivan. So tell us a little bit about Ivan.
So Ivan abandons his best friend Eddie, which is played by Nick Walther, at this ER after a heroin overdose, and he spends the rest of his life really being haunted by what he did. And Eddie's fate is actually the central mystery of this title.
Yeah, yeah. It is so much about the complications of people's lives. Joan Silber, this is her 10th novel, or people might know her from her short stories in The New Yorker. And she's very good at the choices people make. And in this one, most particularly, the choices they make, the way they reverberate, it's almost like a pebble in a pond and the waves spreading outward.
That's true. And I found the narration was really important to me because although those waves are reverberating outward, the perspectives are rather siloed. And so I needed kind of the emotional connection of the narrators to help me stay engaged in the listening.
I hear that. The recklessness of youth. Oh my God, is that apparent in this book? And as was New York in the 1970s, it brought it back so viscerally for me.
And I will point out the other narrators and what parts they played for the most part. Nan McNamara reads Astrid, formerly known as Ginger. That's Eddie's girlfriend who goes on to become a successful soap opera. And then the other characters are the young best friends, Kara and Nini, who are in the ER at the same time as Eddie. And then Kara's daughter, Isabel, rounds out the cast of characters. I can't necessarily tell you who played each one because the publisher did not include a cast list.
Which is so irritating.
It is.
Because I really wanted to look up, especially Kara.
Yes.
Kara's story also resonated with me more deeply than I can tell you. It brought back so much of my misspent youth. That's all I want to say about it. And I thought she was wonderful. They were all so good.
Yeah, again, it was the narration that really helped me sit in the pocket of this book, which had some, emotionally difficult things to listen to, and also that separation of character to character that needed a little through line in the character connection through how they were feeling.
And I want to give a shout out to Nan McNamara because I thought she did such a good job as Astrid, formerly known as Ginger. She becomes a very successful actress, and she grows up, but we see her career, and we also see how the impact of her early life is playing out in her career
Totally.
and the choices she can make as an artist, as an actor. And I thought that was a really particularly sensitive narration.
Yes, and this idea of choices that you make constantly changing the course of your life and the lives of those around you, I just think is a
Right.
powerful concept.
Well, why don't we hear a little? I know you have something picked for us.
This was L.J. Ganser as Ivan working the program.
Okay. This is Mercy by Joan Silber.
I had one major slip that season. I was in a car driven by a woman I'd just started dating, and we passed a billboard with an ad for wholesome grade A milk held blissfully in a glass by a pretty redhead. I saw when we got closer that the milk drinker was Ginger. Yes, it was. The laughing eyes, the wispy curls. I should have been glad that she was doing well, but the sight of her undid me, and I was less than pleasant to the woman driving. I went home by myself at the end of the night and made a phone call I shouldn't have. Aside from that, I was fine. In my way. If I uttered the renowned supplication, "Give me a break," it was the higher power I was asking, and it gave me more breaks than I deserved.
I think Ivan is such an interesting character who seems to own up, at least to himself, what he did. But does he really own it? Does he really? And I think Ganser really nails that ambiguity in the narration.
Well, I think that's what each of the narrators does. They're able to find the layers in the characters, which to bring that from what's on the page into a vocal performance, I think can be challenging. You can't
I
just
agree.
read the words, you have to really inhabit the characters. And all six of the narrators really do that here. So hats off to them.
I absolutely agree. Okay, so now we're moving to.
Next up is The Storm by Rachel Hawkins, read by Stephanie Nemeth Parker, Patria Burchard, Dan Bittner, Kathy Colas, Alex Snow, Patty Murin, and Jane Oppenheimer. Whew, it's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, but another really good listen.
Yes. And this one has a lot of elements that I really like because it's about a death during a storm years ago. And it's sort of the fictional true crime mystery, which kind of my fave thing. So
Mhm.
we're on the Gulf Coast of Alabama and we meet Geneva, who runs the struggling Rosalie Inn that has survived multiple hurricanes over the years. She takes a needed last minute booking from journalist August Fletcher, who is co writing the memoir of Gloria Lowe Bailey. And Lowe was accused and acquitted of murdering her married lover, the governor's son, during a hurricane when she was 19. All right, you got all that?
I got all that. And to complicate things even more, he was found on the property of the inn. So that sort of brings the Rosalie Inn into it.
Yes. And Geneva, who happens to be a true crime buff herself, gets to know August and Lowe and learns more about the death, which was ultimately called an accident due to the storm, though many people consider Lowe still the perpetrator of the crime. The mystery deepens beyond just who did it, as we find that lives in this town are surprisingly intertwined. So, not unlike our last title, those pebbles on the pond sending out waves and
Mhm.
ripples, we get that here.
We sure do. And it also has a lot of plot twists.
That's true. And this was another book where the narration was super important because I didn't find there was anything earth shattering or new about the story itself. But listening to the narrators perform the characters, I couldn't really stop. And they had me on the edge of my seat wanting more.
They really did. This was a really, really good narration. There were letters also in this book, and they were narrated particularly well. And we really got to know the governor's son and his charm through those letters, the way he could seduce this girl.
Totally. And just a shout out to the producer and publisher, because this type of interstitial, as it were, takes a really good transition to make sure that you're not taken out of the story when you're hearing the letter. And I thought they did an excellent job of that.
Boy, I did too. Because you're hearing about the governor's son and you're just thinking, oh God, what a player, what a player. Then you realize how seductive he really is.
And isn't that what true crime is all about?
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to give a shout out to Stephanie Nemeth Parker, who gives Geneva, who's sort of the linchpin in this in some ways, a really steady, practical warmth and the voice of someone who's used to holding things together. And I really appreciated her relationship with her mother, who has dementia, and the way that's unfolding during the book. I was very moved by that.
Yeah, again, I thought all the narrators were really solid. I wish I knew who played which character. A little metadata, a little thing at the end, you know.
It's so frustrating. And at the end of this, I think it does say something like afterward or end notes. And I thought, oh, well, I'll know who's playing who. The answer is you don't.
Yeah. Shall we hear a little?
I want to.
Okay.
Are we hearing Stephanie?
We're hearing Stephanie Nemeth Parker as Geneva, kind of setting the scene for us.
Okay, this is The Storm by Rachel Hawkins, again, a multicast production. We're hearing from Stephanie Nemeth Parker.
This stretch of beach outside the Rosalie is public. My mom and her dad before her never wanted to fight that, knowing the last thing you should do in a tourist town is piss off the locals. But this time of day, it's almost always empty. Today, there's one lone figure on the beach, an old guy in salt-stained khaki shorts, his skinny chest bare and slightly concave, his skin so tanned he looks like he's been carved out of wood. He's got a fishing pole in his bony hands, the surf splashing against his calves, and when he catches sight of me, he lifts a few fingers in a barely there wave. "Hey, Cap!" He has an actual name, I'm sure, but he's been Cap as long as I can remember, even if no one in town knows if he actually was a captain at some point in his life. Or maybe he just wore a funny cap one time back in 1973, and that's why it stuck. Edie had once suggested over a couple of beers in the inn's courtyard.
I really enjoyed her performance. I thought it was such a grounded listening performance. And, you know, as Geneva is piecing things together, you can really hear her shifting perspective in real time.
Completely. And I mean, there's a lot of fun around the narration in this book, you know, a bit of a character play.
Mm-hmm.
So she has to ground the story, and that requires, again, the importance of emotional intelligence in the performance.
Absolutely. And boy, does she deliver it here. Okay, so we're ending with
That's Not How It Happened by Craig Thomas, read by Colby Smulders, Josh Radner, Marley Watson, and Kevin Iannucci.
And this is another Earphones winner.
Yes. And this was a total surprise to me, both the book itself and the narrators. It's from this new type of entertainment that I'm starting to experience in multiple mediums, and I'm calling it mature. So it's realistic, relatable characters in books and film that seem to have true life problems and conversations. They often find the funny and the important moments in the challenges of life we all face. So somehow between Hollywood, I'm seeing it in television too, between Hollywood and authors, we seem to want to bring those elements in a bit more.
Well, and interesting you say that you see it in television, because this book was written by the producer of
How I Met Your Mother. And to the narrators, Josh Radner and Colby Smulders make up half the cast of How I Met Your Mother. And here was my surprise. They did a great job narrating. That's not always a given with actors who I know more from the television and film medium. They seem to struggle a bit more. This is a marathon, not a sprint, to record an audiobook, and they both did a great job.
I agree. I think all the voices worked well because the other two characters, who are Marley Watson and Kevin Iannucci, they're also wonderful. And I thought their voices worked so well separately. And even though they don't interact, I found their voices really complemented one another.
That's true. And I will say the big television stars didn't really do character voices so much, but because they read with clarity and emotion, everything was very clear. And it was a very smart choice to have 4 different narrators with these 4 different perspectives.
I agree. So tell us a little bit about the story, because we seem to have forgotten.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So the story is really centered around Paige, who is a mother who set aside her career to care for her son, Emmett, who has Down syndrome. And ultimately, she writes a memoir about the experience, which is optioned for a film. And she steps into this world of film, but it turns out her husband, Rob, has been in this world for years. He wrote a successful rom-com about their relationship, and he's been a script doctor for many films, which has allowed them to support their 2 children. And that's the 4th character. They also have a daughter, Darcy.
And they also have a daughter named Darcy, which is part of the problem of the book, where Darcy feels like, right, I'm also the daughter named Darcy.
That's true. Yes, she is the secondary character in her own family's life, she feels, and that's played out in my description as well. When we meet these characters, Rob's career is on the downslide, and they've really kept their lives in their own lanes, with Rob working and Paige at home, and now they have to collide together, and it is super uncomfortable.
Oh, it is so way uncomfortable. Woof. This book is both a satire on Hollywood, but it's also a look at raising a
Yes.
kid with Down syndrome. And one thing I really appreciated is how clear they were about how fortunate they
Yes.
were to
Yep.
have money that they could spend, because they do spend a lot of money. And, they create a store where he and other people who have a disability can work. They purchased a house that could serve as a group house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really costly.
Absolutely. And yet you are able to feel sympathy for them in the reality of their
Oh,
lives,
yeah.
even though they come from a space of privilege. And I think that's some good writing and some great performance.
I agree, because they're owning that privilege,
Yeah.
and I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
For me, the book becomes a little didactic at times, where I felt I was getting a bit of a lecture about the history of disability rights, which is certainly important, but it didn't all the time feel like it sprang from the story. And I know Craig Thomas has a kid with a disability, so I get it, and I get why it's important for him to get that information out there.
That makes sense. It didn't bother my listening or stand out for me in any way. What more stood out was each of the performances being so strong, and I thought that
Yeah.
Marley Watson sounded so fresh.
She was so good.
She was great. And
She played Darcy.
Yes, and then, of course, Kevin Iannucci, who is an actor with Down syndrome, like, you could really get something from the performance of someone who lives that reality but is also a skilled actor themselves, that it was just, all over. I was like, wow, I didn't expect this. I really liked it.
He was the perfect choice. He gives a great performance.
So surprise after surprise in this one for me, and thanks to the author for writing a book where people can be challenged in real life situations in a way that's very relatable and not cloying. And
We have to hear a little.
oh, yes, of course. This is Josh Radnor as Rob, really feeling the reality of his film writing career hitting a low point.
This is That's Not How It Happened. It's by Craig Thomas.
After moving back east to the burbs, aka the former Hollywood Screenwriter Witness Protection Program, I tried to make it work. Conference calls and cross-country flights kept me clinging to LA's call sheet. It was tough on Paige and the kids for me to be away so much, but we made up for distance with little invented traditions. On hard days, I'd come back to my hotel room to find room service cheesecake and a glass of brandy waiting for me, called in by Paige. A little taste of home. For lengthier film shoots, the fam would come visit me. They'd all shiver next to me on some cold, dark soundstage, learning how the Hollywood sausage got made while catching a rare glimpse of their dad looking vaguely cool. This semi-long-distance life wasn't perfect, but it paid the bills. That is, until the law of averages finally caught up with me. Like any gambler, I hit a bad streak.
I think this was a really good excerpt because I think as Rob, we can hear Josh Radnor sort of capture that uneasy mix of confidence and quiet panic as his career is slipping. You know, you can really hear that strain, but it's unshowy.
That's it. That sort of feeling of realism. In a way, to me, it was a companion piece to the film Is This Thing On?, where it was about the struggles in a marriage in midlife as you're experiencing a wide variety of things happening with your career and growing independently from your partner. So, again, it's that mature.
I think we have hit upon a new genre.
There we go.
Mature. I like it. Michele, it is always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next month.
That sounds great.
You've been listening to Behind the Mic with Kirkus Reviews. Behind the Mic drops on Thursdays, and if you follow us, we will just appear in your feed. And while you're at it, follow Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. Fully Booked is the podcast for book lovers. Every Tuesday, host Megan Labrise brings you author interviews, industry insights, and recommendations from the bestseller list. Find your next great book on Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. You can get Fully Booked and Behind the Mic on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to stop by kirkusreviews.com to check out reviews for both print and audiobooks. Behind the Mic is produced by Jessica Lockhart. Michele Cobb, Stephen Cummings, Leslie Fine, Ella Minskoff, Alex Ritchie, Laura Rossi, and Kendra Winchester are our contributors. Jennifer Dahl is our editor, with assistance from Alicia Langerman. Tom Beer is the executive producer. The music is William Ross Chernoff's Nomads 4-Way. And I'm your host, Joe Reed. Good listening.